All right, let's dive right in. Welcome to this explainer, where we're going to decode the complex, sometimes surprising, and honestly just fascinating machinery of Indian state governance. If you've ever found yourself totally tangled up in the constitutional webs of the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary, well, you're in the right place. We are going to break the whole shebang down, step by step, to give you a crystal clear picture of how power actually operates at the state level in India.
To kick things off, let's think about this. Who really holds the ultimate power in an Indian state? Is it the governor, sitting there as the constitutional head? Is it the state legislature, churning out the laws that govern millions of people? Or is it the judiciary, acting as the ultimate referee? It's this incredibly delicate, ongoing tug-of-war. And today, we're going to see exactly how these pillars balance against each other and, sometimes how they completely collide.
So here is our roadmap. First, the power of the governor. Second, inside the state legislature. Third, how bills become laws. Fourth, the integrated judiciary. And finally, number 5, the judicial appointments battle. Let's get to it.
Part 1. The power of the governor.
So, the governor is the constitutional head of the state executive, right? Every state government action is legally taken in their name. But how much actual, real power does this office hold? Well, Article 163, Clause 2 is particularly interesting here. It gives the governor discretionary power and states that their decisions in these matters are final. Period. They literally cannot be questioned in any court. But, and here is a massive exam trap you absolutely need to watch out for, this doesn't mean the governor can just go rogue and act arbitrarily whenever they feel like it. No way. This absolute discretion only applies in matters where the Constitution explicitly says it does. For everything else, they are strictly guided by the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers, which, by the way, operates completely in secret.
A lot of people think the governor is just a copy-paste version of the president at the state level. Actually, scratch that. It's more like they're distant cousins. The governor has explicitly defined constitutional discretion, whereas the president is generally bound by the aid and advice of the union ministers. Plus, the governor holds office purely at the pleasure of the president. There's no fixed term, there's no complex impeachment process like the president has. The governor can be removed or just resigned at any point simply by writing to the president.
All right, moving right along to Part 2, inside the state legislature.
Now, you might assume every single Indian state has a two-house or bicameral legislature, just like the Union Parliament in Delhi. But the real number? It's just 6. Only 6 states have a legislative council alongside their legislative assembly. For the record, those are Andhra Pradesh, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, and Telangana. So what's the actual difference between these two houses? Think of the Legislative Assembly, the Vidhan Sabha, as the lower house. It's directly elected by voters for a 5-year term, and it maxes out at 500 members. But then you have the Legislative Council, the Vidhan Parishad. It's elected indirectly through a special electoral college. And here is a huge takeaway for you. The council is a permanent house. Just like the Rajya Sabha at the center, it can never be dissolved. It's perpetual. Instead, 1/3 of its members just cycle out and retire every 2 years.
Okay, Section 3. Let's see how bills actually become laws. Seeing this legislative machinery in action is like watching a giant puzzle come together. It reveals exactly where the checks and balances really lie. Let's start by following the money. Under Article 199, the journey of a money bill is incredibly restricted. Step 1. A money bill can only ever be introduced in the Legislative Assembly, never ever the Council. Once passed, Step 2 gives the Legislative Council a maximum of just 14 days to return it. If they just sit on it, it's deemed passed anyway. Finally, it lands on the governor's desk. And here's the catch. The governor can assent to it, withhold it, or reserve it for the president, but they absolutely cannot return a money bill for reconsideration.
But what about ordinary bills under Article 200? Well, the governor has a slightly different toolkit here. They can assent, withhold, or reserve the bill for the president, which happens a lot if it threatens the High Court's power or violates the Constitution. But here is the absolutely crucial difference. The governor can return an ordinary bill for reconsideration, but they can only do it once. So the bottom line is, if the state legislature just repasses that exact same bill and sends it right back, boom, the governor loses their discretion. They are constitutionally forced to give their assent.
Now, red alert, watch out for this massive misconception that trips up a lot of folks. If the two houses of the state legislature fundamentally disagree on a bill, what happens? Basically nothing. Unlike the Union Parliament, where the president can just summon a joint sitting to break a deadlock, state legislatures have absolutely no provision for a joint sitting. None. If the Assembly and the Council can't get on the same page, the Council can really only delay an ordinary bill for a maximum total of 4 months. After that, the Assembly's will prevails. It's as simple as that.
Moving to Part 4, the integrated judiciary.
All these laws passed by the legislature and executed by the governor, they need an independent referee. In India, we have a single integrated system of courts for both union and state laws. Now, tracing the history of this apex referee clears up a very common historical trap. You will often hear about a Supreme Court in 1774. That was established at Calcutta under the Regulating Act of 1773. But that is not our modern court. Later, in 1937, a federal court was established in Delhi. Finally, on January 28, 1950, our present Supreme Court of India officially started functioning, sitting right at the very top of our unified judicial pyramid.
And finally, Section 5, the judicial appointments battle.
Honestly, this is one of the most complex, intense constitutional tugs of war in Indian history. How do these incredibly powerful judges actually get their seats? Well, Article 124, Clause 2, says the president appoints judges in consultation with the Chief Justice. But historically, we've seen a massive shift in what that word consultation actually means. Back in 1981, the first judge's case ruled that consultation does not mean concurrence. Basically, the executive branch had the final say. But the judiciary grabbed the steering wheel back in the 1993 second judge's case, and later the 1993 third judge's case. They ruled that the Chief Justice's recommendation is binding, and that birthed the collegium system we know today, run by the Chief Justice and the 4 senior-most judges.
But as you can guess, the story didn't end there. Parliament pushed back hard. So we have the judicially created collegium on one side, and on the other, Parliament created the National Judicial Appointments Commission, or the NJAC, via the 99th Constitutional Amendment. This was designed to be a 6-member body that specifically included the Union Law Minister, effectively giving the executive branch a seat back at the appointment table to replace the collegium.
And that led directly to a historic showdown. In the 4th judge's case of 2015-2016, the Supreme Court struck down the NJAC entirely. The court neutrally laid out the constitutional facts, declaring the 99th Amendment unconstitutional because it violated the basic structure doctrine. Specifically, they pointed right at Article 50, which demands the separation of the judiciary from the executive. The court ruled that executive interference compromised judicial independence, and they instantly restored the collegium system.
So, alongside the collegium, how do we choose the Chief Justice of India? The firmly established rule, really cemented since that 1993 second judge's case, is the principle of seniority. The senior-most judge of the Supreme Court naturally ascends to the top job. But here's a fascinating piece of constitutional trivia. There were some wild historical exceptions. In 1973 with A.N. Ray and in 1977 with M.H. Begg, senior judges were actually superseded by the executive to appoint a Chief Justice. Since 1993, though, strict seniority has been the unbroken golden rule.
And that brings us to the end of our explainer. We've seen how the governor has this unique discretion, how the legislature navigates these strict pathways to pass laws without any joint sittings, and how the judiciary fiercely protects its independence. It's this constant, brilliant system of checks and balances. But I'll leave you with this one final thought. With these pillars constantly checking each other, does a perfect balance of power even truly exist? Or is one pillar always quietly dominating the others? Keep questioning and keep exploring your Constitution.